Welcome. The topic of this presentation is golf course design philosophies that come of age during the 1920s. Walter Travis, one of the early golf course architects and a person who would write on golf course architecture, describes the differences between the old style of bunkers on the left and the modern style of bunkers on the right. Although specific to bunkers, notice the penal nature of the cross bunkers and geometric design of the tees, greens, and fairways in the old style, in comparison to the modern style, which shows more strategic bunkering. And in this modern style, there is more flow to the fairways, greens, and it's not so geometric. The focus of this presentation will be mainly on the differences between strategic and penal design. Two major design philosophies arose from the old course at St. Andrews, called natural and strategic. This is a view of the clubhouse at St. Andrews. The first school of design we will term natural. The natural school of design is based on how St. Andrews was in the 17th century. St. Andrews consisted of no predetermined yardage or par. The number of holes varied, and the location itself just seemed natural for golf. The holes followed the terrain of the land with little disturbance to it. This is a view of the old course at St. Andrews. This is a diagram how a natural design golf hole might look. Notice the impact of the bunker in the middle of the fairway. Requires the golfer to think which way they need to play. Natural design is often incorporates strategic design philosophies. Currently, the term minimalist is used to describe the natural school of design. The naturalists or minimalists would be Alan Roberson, Old Tom Morrison, Willie Park. In today's world of golf course architecture, people like Tom Doak would be considered a minimalist. Strategic design concepts also originated at St. Andrews. When golf became more popular in 1848 to 1850, the fairways of St. Andrews were widened to relieve congestion. The result was the origination of the strategic design. Strategic design is simply a golfer needs to think about the kind of shot that they need to hit prior to striking the ball. The widening of the fairways at St. Andrews meant that adjacent golf holes share not only the greens, but the fairway areas due to the out and back layout of the course. The opening up of the fairways meant that the holes could be played by various routes. The placement of a bunker in the fairway, for example, this is Hell's bunker on the 14th hole at St. Andrews, or the Beardies, could change the direction a hole should be played. Actually, there are holes where playing down the adjacent fairway was a better way to play the hole than its proper way. This is a drawing of the 14th hole at St. Andrews shown in the previous picture. Notice there's 4 different ways to play this hole from the teeing area. Routes A and B are actually down the adjacent fairway of another hole. This is a drawing of a make-believe hole that's based on the concept of strategic design presented in the previous slide. Here, if you take the risk and try to hit it over the bunker and you are successful, you are faced with an open, shorter shot to the green. If you decide to go more to the right, which is a safer way, you are now faced with a much longer second shot and must contend with the greenside bunker. This drawing is a classic example often used to depict a strategic design philosophy. In a contest that was sponsored by Country Life magazine in 1914 and coordinated by Bernard Darwin, a famous golf writer in England, Alister Mackenzie won first place with this drawing. Notice the multiple ways of playing the hole, some more risky than others, but also greater rewards for taking a greater risk. I'm not sure if this hole would actually be very practical, since it's looks to me about 250 yards wide. If we were to look at the strategic type of golf course designers, there are several, many of which did golf course design during the 1920s. You would include people like H.S. Cole, Donald Ross, C.B. McDonald, Alistair Mackenzie, Albert W. Tillinghast, George Thomas, and Perry Maxwell, to name a few. We have alluded in previous presentations to the School of Penal Design. In comparison to strategic design, penal design requires a certain type of shot, in most cases a straight shot. If the shot is not hit correctly, you are punished, and oftentimes severely. I like to think of penal design from the mental aspect is to reward those who can endure the most torture. Most United States Open championships are set up to be penal in nature, having long, deep, rough, and forced carries. This is an artistic drawing of a hypothetical penal hole. Notice that the tee shot is a forced carry over water to the fairway. If you can't hit it over the water, you're penalized. Then there's water on the left and out of bounds on the right, which requires a straight shot. The second shot is a forced carry to an island green. The early courses in the United States were characterized by penal design. Cross bunkers were placed often just 100 to 150 yards off the tee to catch and punish any poorly hit shots, those that were topped or hit along the ground. A cross bunker is shown here about 100 yards off the tee. This is a picture of what the second shot on the 18th hole at Pine Valley looks like. The second shot must carry a stream, and then bunkers guarding the front of the green. In other words, there's only one type of shot to hit on this hole. You must carry it all the way to the green. One of the most famous holes in golf is the 17th at TPC at Sawgrass in Florida, and by its nature is penal in design. The short par 3 requires a perfect shot. The green is surrounded by water. The major schools of design are strategic, penal, and natural. There are other design concepts like the heroic design, which was put forth by Robert Trent Jones in the 1950s. This concept was to reward as much as one was willing to take a risk. Robert Trent Jones probably only built about 6 of these types of holes, and in many ways they are penal, but the concept is shown here. With your tee shot, you might take an heroic approach where you cut off as much of the dogleg as you can, but the risk is greater because of the longer carry of the water. At this point, I would like to take a moment to mention the impact that course maintenance has on design, especially the aspect of being natural, or more currently termed minimalistic. From St. Andrews through the 1920s, many of the prominent golf courses designed consisted of considerable mounding or rolling or slope in the greens. This photograph shows some of the roll in the greens at St. Andrews. This drawing by Alistair Mackenzie shows considerable mounding in the greens to create areas or sections of greens for pin placements. The concept of putting considerable roll into green shown in the previous picture is shown here on the 5th green at Augusta National. During the 1920s and probably prior, the allowable slope for placing the cup on a green was probably 5 to 6% slope. As times progressed and maintenance became more intense during the 1960s, you could see that the acceptable slope for placing a cup where putting could be fair became less. In the mid-1970s, with the advent of the stimpmeter for measuring ball roll and speed, the acceptable slope for pin placement dropped off significantly until now, with stimpmeter readings in the 11 to 14 range, the acceptable slope for pin placement is less than 2% on the PGA Tour. As greens have increased in speed, the greens have become flatter and in general larger. This picture shows a golf course superintendent measuring ball roll with a stimpmeter. As course design has moved to more natural or a minimalistic design, putting more slope and mounds in greens and then maintaining them at 1/10 of an inch to get green speed is not natural. The result are greens that are extremely difficult and in many ways unfair. So an important part of golf course design is considering how that course is going to be maintained. In future presentations, we will look at various types of golf holes that incorporate the design philosophies we have discussed here.